But we just finished a 3-week program where we looked at sustainable innovation at a bunch of different, about 20, 25 different sites in Chicago. I met with different people. Anyone here? No, they're all still in Europe, I think. Anyone here? Lisa, there you are. Sorry, I thought I recognized someone. Lisa Ross, raise your hand. Lisa just got back from Amsterdam with me. Was on this program, and so we spent 2 weeks in Chicago, and then we spent 1 week in Amsterdam, including a very cold, about 6-hour bike ride that Lisa was the champion on, because Lisa hadn't been on a bike since she was 12, and we went on a 6-hour sustainable mobility bike ride. And she was the most valued, most improved bicyclist on that. And biking in Amsterdam is not for the faint of heart. You gotta keep up. But we had a great time with that. But all these people that touch, because to me the challenge with sustainability, and this is my question for you, Nancy, is this culture shift. Is that Nancy Fishman here is the executive director of the Grant Victoria Foundation, who hired us to do a project we'll talk about in a second. But there's not enough money in the world to buy all the change that we need to do with regard to sustainability or climate change. We can't buy it. It's not going to happen. We can't just like, okay, let's support this program and that's going to take out 100 tons of carbon or 1,000 tons of carbon. We have to create a culture shift. And how do you do that? And that's been the challenge that I have been sort of putting to myself for the last 7 years with Foresight. And the projects and green drinks, and it's all part of the answer. But Nancy, let's talk to you a little bit about you, because I think we sort of share a certain vision in terms of this. From your perspective as the head of a foundation, what do you see as the challenges of this thing called sustainability? And maybe you talk a little bit about how Grant Victoria is involved in land conservation and different aspects of it along the way.
I think one of the biggest challenges is communicating in a way that people can relate to at a personal level. When we talk about sustainability, I think the general listener doesn't know what we're talking about. So finding ways to bring people into a conversation and letting them frame it so that it does mean something to them, and then they can make some decisions about actions to take, I think is an important way to move forward with it.
Yeah, and so maybe talk a little bit about the scope of Grant Victoria Foundation, and then maybe about the project that we worked on, or was sort of the one project that led to the other project.
Grant Victoria Foundation is really interested in helping communities become vibrant places to live and work. And the lens that we use is somewhat integrated. I mean, we're really addressing a host of issues as a connected set of issues that affect the livability and sustainability of a community, and particularly we're focusing on education, economic development, and the environment, and we have certain strategies. But our approach to all of our grant making is to engage the communities that are struggling with issues that they want to resolve, and ask them what they've been trying to do, what's been working, and what role we could play to help them make it work better. We identified through this process an issue among the land conservation community in Illinois, that they felt that land conservation in Illinois was extraordinarily fragmented on every single level. The organizations and governmental units available to protect important natural areas were not working well together. The financial resources available to protect the land were highly concentrated in some parts of the state and completely absent in other parts of the state. And the result was natural areas were getting protected in a way that didn't really add up to a high-functioning ecosystem in the state. And they kept telling us, if somebody could just coordinate us, if somebody would organize us into some kind of a forum where we could develop some kind of unified vision for achieving a high-functioning system of protected natural areas, things would really change. And so we said, well, okay, we could try that. We'll try to play that role of a neutral convener. So we called Foresight Design in to help us do a couple of things. One, to name this, because we started to find right away how cumbersome it was to try to go around and have conversations with people about how do you create a high-functioning system for protecting land in Illinois that results in a high-functioning system of protected land. And so we spent a little bit of time with the folks at Foresight talking about what we were hearing from people and what we felt were the attributes of the effort. And so they helped us name the program, which is called Vital Lands Illinois. The land conservation community in Illinois thinks this is perfect, because the word vital to them really expresses how they feel. I mean, one of the things we've been talking to them about is, let's get to the puke factor. And that's another thing that they can relate to very personally. If it's, what's going to be, if it's lost and makes you feel like you're going to hurl.
You heard it here first from the executive director of the DREA.
That's right. I mean, we bring rubber vomit to the, to the meetings just to remind people, but, it has to be at a very visceral level, to understand people's motivation for coming together to do something that they never come together to do, but that they all care about very much. But probably more important than helping us figure out how to refer to this effort was analyzing the system of land protection in Illinois. And we hired, as a consultant, Foresight Design. We needed them to be our advisors. So we hired them to analyze the system of land protection in Illinois. They spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different sectors that intersect in land protection and created a really interesting matrix that a working group of land conservation specialists have been working with to really decide where it's going to be the most strategic to start working in order to achieve a high-functioning system of protected land. Yeah. All right, so that's a lot of blah, blah, blah. Did I answer your question?
That's okay.
I would say one of the things that Foresight and Grand Victoria have in common is an organicness in the way that we work. So we too kind of make it up as we go along because we do leave it up to the people who are doing the work and trying to facilitate their ability to move something in a direction that they think is going to bring in a good result.
Yeah, and we have a design method. I think what we bring to the community is really this idea of design thinking and creative problem solving. There's lots of other, not lots, there's several of our colleague organizations, and they have the same, we're working on the same problems. I think that's what we bring that's unique. It's I hope that and there's also a methodology to it, even though it may not seem, one of the odd things about when we start a project is we don't assume what the outcome's going to be. So when we started this project, except with Karen, we knew with the city, you got to tell them at least something, otherwise they get all uptight and everything. But with Grand Victoria, it was basically if we assume we know what the outcome's going to be, that's automatically going to skew the process. And that we knew, I didn't know what the map was going to look like. I didn't know how long it was going to take. I didn't know all these things, and I don't presume to have told her. And Elizabeth signed the letter anyway. And Elizabeth, as Nancy and I know, has a different personality than perhaps you and I a little bit. She's very type A, exceedingly type A.
She's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer, yes. And we love Elizabeth, and it's been great working with her. It's great working with her, but sometimes you get in this process and you only know the next step. And you have to take the next step before you know where the next step is, and the next step is, and the next step is. And it's not a content-driven process, it's really a process-driven process, if that makes sense. And we can talk more about this in a little bit.